Hello. So let's have a quick conversation around forecasting. So the main topic in this conversation will be forecasting. But before we get on with that, let's remember this model or this framework which I have created to kind of contextualize most of the things you do in this module in BM7102, business decision making. So in decision making, we have various tasks that we are undertaking. We are usually trying to diagnose or find out about why things are happening, and in doing that, we may want to be able to explain to other colleagues, other stakeholders, the basis of our judgments and the decisions and our performance and so on and so forth. We may also have to be very conversant with how to look forward into the future, isn't it? How to plan and forecast and organize and structure. So in doing all that, we need to be aware that we are usually dealing with a higher amount of uncertainty in our business decision-making tasks. Okay, so we cannot really get rid of uncertainty, and uncertainty is embedded in the various judgment and decision tasks that we are involved in. And you know why? It is simply because we are dealing with human beings, and human beings being social entities will interact, and in their interactions there will be a fair amount of uncertainty or unpredictability, because different things motivate or underpin different actions. Okay, so when we look at the way individuals and groups are behaving, we can only observe what's out there. But what we observe is driven, it's underpinned, it's motivated by other mechanisms which are obscured from our direct observation. Okay, so we know individuals have life in them, and their life probably can be understood in terms of some form of consciousness, and by the simple fact that they are alive, they have some biological stuff going on within them, which combined with their intentions drive them in making choices. Okay, so that is just one individual, and then we have to start thinking about how these individuals interact and work with other people and other teams. There are many other dynamics that go on within the social setting. Okay, so in groups you have individuals, so these individuals have their psychological makeup, and that interacts or intersects with the group dynamics. We as an organization and as teams and as society also have some expectations around the task that the individual is undertaking. So the latent mechanisms or the factors which underpin what we observe, which are not visible to us, prevent us from being very certain, prevents us from 100-degree or 100% certainty about the reasons for the choices and the actions that we observe in individuals and in groups. However, whether we like it or not, we have performance targets, we have ambitions that we have to achieve, and we need to perform. So our performance, whether we do well or don't do well, is not just something that we control. Okay, so let's accept that we don't have 100% control over people and teams and and the decisions and the judgments that they make. We can constrain them. We can set the tone, but people have choices. Okay, so it's decision making and judgments are a complex phenomenon that we need to understand. So with that at the back of our minds, we have to understand why knowing about current knowledge structures in this domain is quite important, right? How have we studied and understood individuals and groups and teams and businesses that are successful in their judgments and in their decisions, and what can we learn from them to help us reduce the level of uncertainty that we will have to grapple with? So that is the background story. The background story is we want to learn about best practice, about how to go about making judgments and decisions using our intuition, of course, but also the analytical tools that we have. We combine that to fill this void in the middle there, right? So that bit there that you can see, that dark spot, is the degree of expertise that will come out of the things that we do when we make judgments and decisions. Okay, so the task that we want to talk about briefly in this conversation is forecasting. And forecasting is quite important because we need to look forward. We need to have the ability to form valid expectations amidst all the uncertainty. How do we make sure that we can look into the future and be predictive about what we have to expect? That's very important because that has resource allocation implications, that has structural implications, that would be a driver for a lot of the choices that we will make in the future. So just a quick conversation about how we can use some basic tools to collect data and forecast. Well, having said what we've said, remember, we are not expecting 100% accuracy, right? Because nobody really knows what the future holds. And the best we can do is to use a range of techniques and the data available to form these valid expectations. So no single model is perfect, but every model has a bit of truth in it. And we will assume the concept of additivity here. So instead of just using one model, we would use a couple of models or techniques, and we will combine them. Okay, so as we combine them, we will be picking the truth, the grains of truth that each of them will capture, and then we would probably have a more robust, a more defensible picture about what the future holds. Okay, so that's just the story around forecasting. I hope you've read a bit of the text, the books that we've recommended, so that you'll be able to tell the story around how you go about improving the reliability and the validity of the forecasts that you generate. So first things first, when you're using Excel for forecasting, remember you need to access the analysis tool pack. So let's check to see if you've switched yours on. Right? So the way you switch yours on is you go into File. I'm using Office 2016. Office 2016. So if I go to File and I go to Options and I go to Add-ins, I'll be able to access the add-ins here, and I would make sure that the analysis tool pack is switched on, right? So I click on that, I select and tick. Whilst we're here, it will also be good practice to switch on the solver add-in if you haven't done that already, because the solver add-in is quite useful for the optimization topic in the module. Okay, so I've switched both on. If I said okay, then if I come to data in Excel here, I can see both of them are switched on in the on my screen. The other add-in that I recommended was the Excel modules add-in. You can see I've switched mine on. Okay, so if you haven't switched that on yet, please try and follow the instructions on Moodle and switch that on. I would begin this illustration with the basic forecasting techniques that are available in Excel itself. Okay, and to help us do that, I've collected this data here from the ONS website. So you probably know that I'm a cyclist. I enjoy cycling, and we've got the incidences of bicycle theft in the UK each year over the last 19 years, I think. Yeah, 19 years. So what we will be doing is we'll be trying to use the basic techniques in Excel to form valid expectations of what the likely incidences of bicycle theft are going to be for the next 5 years. Okay. So where do we start from? Okay, I would suggest that we begin with the regression, right? The regression approach. Why not? So what I'll do is I'll use two of the basic functionalities in Excel to generate a regression forecast. Let's start by going into data and analysis, and then we would select our regression here. So we select our regression, and we can see this menu here will be asking for the y variables and the x variables. So it's very straightforward. Y is the variable or the thing that we are trying to predict. Okay. The example here will be the number of bicycle thefts, right, for the future. And the variables that are helping us predict the y are the x's. Okay, so let's pick our y by just collapsing that drop down menu and selecting the y here, and let's pick the x by collapsing that and dropping in the x's. The first rules here are labels. They are not numbers, so we have to select that. And for a quick example, let's just say okay. Okay. When we do that, Excel has done a simple regression. It is a simple regression because we have just one x that is the year or the time that was being used to predict the number of bicycle thefts. So the important bits of statistics that we would pick up here will be the R square, right, and the coefficients for our regression equation and the p-values. Right, so the p-values are there to help us assess whether the the x variables, the independent variables. The x is the independent variable because it is that variable that the y depends on. Okay, so just taking my time here and using some of those concepts that you would have seen in the books that you've read. So the y is what we are predicting, and it is the dependent variable because it depends on the x. The x is the independent variable, and it is that variable that is being used to predict the y. We need to assess whether the independent variable is statistically significant. And by convention, we use a 5% level of confidence. We would then reject the null hypothesis if our p-value for the x, so the x being here, if the p-value is less than 5%. So we can see here that our x is more than 5%. So we cannot reject the null hypothesis, which means that statistically this independent variable is not significant, right? Because the error is more than 5%. The R-square is also informative because it tells us, all things being equal, the percentage change in our dependent variable that is attributable to the independent variable. So how effective is our x in explaining the change in our y? So we have 0.18, which is about 18%. So only 18% of the variation or the change in our y is explained by the x. Okay, so that is how you do it. You go into data, you select regression, you drop in the y, you drop in the x's. There are defaults there for level of confidence and all that, but make sure that you select the variables appropriately. And when you arrive here, the three crucial things you're looking at are the R-square, the coefficients, and the p-values. Okay, so let's do it again. This time, we would use a different means of, getting the regression, and then we would try and use the coefficients to generate the actual forecast. Okay, so let's do it again. So here, where were we? We were here. Right, so we've got the data here, and what we can do is we can use the insert equation menu here, right? So let's just select the data. So I just select the data now, and I can insert a chart here, right? So I want to draw a line of best fit, want to kind of extrapolate, look at the changes in bicycle theft over the years, and kind of extrapolate, kind of extend the story into the future and see what the future holds. So I need to embed a trend line here. So I go plus and I come to trend line. So this is a linear trend. So I've just drawn a line that is kind of cutting through the heart of the whole distribution. But I can see that, the distribution is not really linear. It's kind of a curve. There's a hump, isn't it? It goes up and it comes down. So a linear trend probably is not the best. So let me just add more options here. And I think a polynomial trend, right, a line that is curved is more intuitive. Kind of, it follows a pattern of the data better than a straight line. So let's go up. 3, I mean, polynomial to the power 3 looks like a better fit. Okay, so I can display the equation for that polynomial here. So that's the equation for that. And I can get the r square for that. So let's just get the r square for that as well. Da, da, da. I've just messed it up a bit, haven't I? It's not. I've moved the image out. Let's just make it bigger so that maybe you can see. So I've got the polynomial equation and a kind of clearer picture there, which shows that the curved line fits the underlying data better than a linear trend. Okay, so we can, or we should, use the data analysis tool pack to generate the same equation and check to see the y values in the future better, and check to see the r square and the p values. Let's just do that. So a polynomial to the power 3 simply means that we've squared and cubed the x's. Okay, so this is what we've done. Let's insert a new column here. So we will call that column year squared, year to the power 2. And let's insert another column and let's call it year to the power 3. And all that we've done is we've squared each year, so we raise it to the power 2 and we can just autofill, and we've cubed each year, so we pick the year and we cube it. And these 3 then constitute our x's. Okay, and of course the bicycle theft is our only y. We can only have one y here. Okay, so what we do next, and please note that what we're trying to do is we're trying to generate this regression equation using the data analysis tool pack. Okay, so just showing you another way of getting this, and then we'll be able to use that to predict the 5, let's say next 5 figures for 2021, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Okay, so that they will be our forecast. Right, we'll be trying to find these here once we know, once we've generated this equation again. I mean, we can use it now. I'm just showing you another way of getting it using the analysis tool pack. So let's just go back in there. We go into data and data analysis, regression. And this time our y, right, still stays the same. This is our y. And our x's have expanded, isn't it? We need to select the multiple x's together. So that's the trick that you have to remember. When we did it the first time, we had just one x. So that was a simple regression. When you want a multiple regression, when you have a multiple regression task, your x's should be next to each other so that you can combine them, select them together, like so. Notice that we've stopped at 2020 because that's the historical data that we have. And the rest will stay the same. The first rows are labels, and we want to be 95% confident. So our alpha is 5. Okay, so let's say okay. When we say okay, we notice that Excel has generated the regression output. You can see there's a slight difference here because this time we have 3 x's, so our coefficients are not just 1, and our p-values have changed as well. Right. They are still not significant because they are still more than 5% or 0.05. However, you can see that our r-square has shot up. Right. So by using the polynomial, it is indeed true that the curvature in the distribution is captured by the polynomial to the power 3, which is why our r-square is now 0.8. If you remember, our r-square was 0.18, so this was 18%. But now we are explaining 80%, so it's a jump from 18% to 80%, which means that all things being equal, this polynomial will track the trend better. If we extrapolate, it will be most probably better than the simple regression here. Okay, and please also note that the coefficients here, let me just copy them. These coefficients, if we copy them, are the same as the coefficients here. Let me just drop them in here. Let's make sure I've copied the right stuff. Yeah, I've copied. Let me copy both the columns so that we can use them appropriately. So I've copied the bits that I need for the equation, and I'm dropping them here. So please note that these figures are the same as the figures you've got there. So we can see the coefficients match the elements of the equation we generated earlier on. That's a perfect fit, isn't it? So the year cubed is there, the year squared is there, and the year, written in scientific form, and the intercept is also there. So what we need to do now then is we need to use these coefficients, effectively this equation, to extend this line here, extend the line into 2025. Okay, effectively that's what we're doing. So let's take our time then. We need to say y is equal to there. So y is equal to the how do you want us to go? Maybe we go according to the way the coefficients are listed here. So let's go according to that way. So y is equal to the intercept, which is a fixed element. Right, so that we select it, plus the year, right? The year, which is that, times the number for the year. Okay, so let's open bracket and say this is the year. Right? We multiply that by its coefficient, and this is the coefficient for the year, plus the year squared. So which one is the year squared? That is the year squared, that's the number for it, multiplied by its coefficient, right? Plus the year cubed multiplied by its coefficient. Okay, so if you just notice what we've just done, we've just, wherever there is x cubed or x squared or x itself, we've multiplied the relevant number by that coefficient. Okay, we just want to use the autofill facility, so we need to use absolute referencing for these numbers, because for each of the subsequent years, 2022, 23, 24, 25, we will still be doing the same thing. We will be picking the intercept plus x times its coefficient plus x squared times its coefficient plus x cubed times its coefficient. So why don't we just fix these numbers that are in the H column? So wherever something has come into our function here from the H column, we're going to fix it. And how do we fix it? Do you remember? We use the dollar signs, and if you look for the F4 function on your keyboard, when I press it, you can see the dollar signs come around the intercept, and then should same thing be around the year coefficient and the year squared coefficient and the year cubed coefficient. Right, so then we can just autofill, and if we just double click this, you can see the equation is multiplying the intercept, sorry, it's picking the intercept plus the A25 is the year times its coefficient, okay, plus a B25, that's B25, no, that's B25 times its coefficient, B25 is H23, that one. Okay, so it's worked, and on the basis of the polynomial regression, these would be our forecasts for 2021, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So what have we done so far? We began by using a simple regression, which had just the year to try and predict the bicycle theft. R square was very tiny, 18%. We had our coefficients and the p-values were not significant. What we have done next is we've used a polynomial. If I just go back there, here, no, sorry, I think it's here. We saw the power of the visual intuition, right? Our visual check told us that a linear regression doesn't explain the variance that much, doesn't explain the change in y that much. So we needed kind of a curvature in our trend line, and that was given to us by the polynomial to the power 3, which gave us that equation, right, that we could have used, but we wanted to demonstrate that we could do it in the form of a multiple regression. So what did we do? We use our analysis tool pack, and well and truly, the polynomial to the power 3 gave us a higher R square, explaining 80% of the change in y. We had our coefficients, and our coefficients have enabled us to make these predictions. Right, so that's the first bit done. I'll just go on now and demonstrate how to use the Excel modules. Give you a few illustrations of that. So if I want to use the Excel modules, how do I do that? Okay, let me just go to the data. Right, so this is the data. Okay, so let's start from scratch. If you have downloaded the Excel modules, remember it will be usually sitting on your desktop. Mine is here, so if I double click that, it would switch it on, and the evidence that it's switched on is that I will see the Excel modules in my Excel menu here. Right, so mine is sitting here, it's switched on. Right, so what yeah, let's just do it. So because it's switched on, I can use it, and why not? So I'll use it by going into Excel modules, seeing the macro here, and going to forecasting. Maybe I will demonstrate with a weighted moving average, right? Remember, you can do simple moving averages. You can even the trend and all the regressions are also in here, right? Okay, so let me just demonstrate with the weighted moving average how to use this. So if I click on the weighted moving average, the menu opens up, and I can give it a title. I'm just going to call it 2021 bicycle theft. Right, and the number of years data that I have is it 19 years? I think it's 19, isn't it? Yeah, I've got 19 years historical data, and these are in years, right? I would just demonstrate a 2-period or a K2 moving average, weighted moving average. Okay, so I'll leave that at 2. You can change that to 3 or 4 or whatever. Let's just start with 2. So when I say okay, it will open up a blank sheet for me, and it has. So it wants me to drop in the actual data. So where is it? The data is here. So I've got the bicycle thefts, right? These are the historical data. So I just copy, select, right click, and copy, and I come in here and I drop in just the values. Okay, so once I've dropped it in, it will ask me for weights. Okay, I look at the data here, and this is where your intuition comes in. Whichever data set you're using or working with, you probably will be a bit familiar with it, and you would know where the trend is going. I can see here that the trend is going down. It's kind of following a downward pattern, and we saw that, didn't we? We saw that when we did where is it? We saw that when we did, oh, it's eluding me. Yeah, we saw that trend is downward. Okay, so the beauty of the weighted moving average is that when we allocate weights, we probably would want to show that it's following a downward trend. But again, it depends on whether you have any broken leg analogies. Remember, broken leg analogy is when your intuition tells you there are things happening now that the model or the historic data wouldn't have picked up. And there I say that we are living through one huge broken leg analogy because of the effect of COVID. I mean, throwing a lot of data trends into a turmoil. So how you pick the weights depend on your subjective judgment, and that's where your intuition kicks in. Okay, for now and for our purposes, all that we need to remember is that the weights that we allocate, because we have 2 periods here, or K2, the weights that we pick should sum up to 1. Okay, so we can go 50-50, for example, 0.5 and 0.5. And as soon as we do that, the error prompt that was down there disappears. Okay, so if you go 50-50, then you're doing a simple, a simple average, right? So why not? Keep your eye on the error metric. So we have 9.59, so about 6. What if we have a trend like that? So 0.2 and 0.8. That brings it down a bit. Okay, so I probably will be able to I can play with the weights, but for now, I'll leave that to your judgment. And that's all I really have to do now. It's just generated the 2021 figure for me. Right, so the next number in my trend line should be 279.8. And I remember when we were having this conversation the other time, we deal with the bicycle thefts here. So 279.8 is quite interesting. The guy has stolen 0.8 of 0.8 of a bike. So you may want to round it up effectively. That's what I'm saying. But you'll have to do it again then, isn't it? So you've got the 2021 forecast. To get the 2022, you just do it again. So you go weighted moving average, and if you name it appropriately, I would say 2022 bicycle theft forecasts. This time I have 20 figures because I had 19 in my actual and I have forecasted 1, and I'm going to throw in that forecast at the end of my input data. So I'll say yeah, I'm still doing the K2 moving average, so I leave that, and then I would bring in that data, bring in all of that. Okay, right, so I drop that in. Just the values. Remember, you need to bring in the last forecast. So this is a rolling forecast. We are not there yet, but our best guess was that the 2021 quantity will be that much. So we drop that in, just the values. And we did 0.2, 0.8. And again, that generates the next forecast for you. And then you do it again. You do it for 2023, 2024, and 2025. So you're repetitively bringing the forecasts into your inputs and generating the next forecast. I hope that gives you a good idea of how to do that. If you haven't been able to install the Excel modules, that's fine. I did drop an Excel sheet on Moodle for you to be able to use, right? So for example, I think the image will be like that, okay? And it's effectively an Excel sheet that has all the equations in them, okay? So you don't need to go into Excel modules, forecasting and all that, because you don't have it effectively. So all you do is you open that spreadsheet and you adjust the length of the data according to the data that you are going to use. Okay, so for example, if I want to repeat the task that I've just done using this sheet here, then all I have to do is I just have to drop in the actual data and put in the weights, and it will work. Let's just show you. So which one had the so this is the data here. So I have the actual data and I copy it and I just drop it in here, drop the values in, and I pick my weight, so 0.2 and 0.8. And if I just want to continue, so I want to go to the next year, I just insert, so year 20. What I do then is I just do the forecast. I mean, the equations are in, so if I just draw down this line, right, you can see it works. It's doing the forecast as a weighted average of the last two, okay, by multiplying each of these by the respective weights. And to go on to the next year, we just have to use these the forecast that we generated as the actual, remember? Okay, so we just copy that figure across, right, 279.8, and then to generate the next year's forecast, we do the same thing. We just drag that thing down, that formula down, and we call it year 21 in our series. The number there will be 278.040, and you can see it's working. Okay, so don't worry too much if you've not been able to install the Excel modules. All you need to do is go on to Moodle. You would see I've put the spreadsheet in there. Adjust it according to the length of your data, and just keep on adding if you need to. So this will be year 22, and then we insert it again. We drag it down. We put the number in, 278.322. That'll be year 23. You can see the sums will be the same as I had for the other one. Let me just see if I can show you. Why don't I just copy all of this here? I'll copy that and go to the last one that I did. Was, which one was that? This one? Yeah. So let's drop it in here. Let's see. Right. So you can see it's the same. I mean, I've gone a couple of years into the future. But otherwise, you can see the figures. If I just highlight that, these are the ones that I had completed here. Well, I started from 19, didn't I? Yeah. Is the same as I've got there. Right. These comfortable bedfellows. Right. So if you continued effectively, whether you use Excel modules or you use the spreadsheet that I've put on Moodle, you end up with the same set of figures. Right. So what have we done so far? What we've done is we've shown you how to use simple regressions, which can be activated using the Excel add-in, the analysis tool pack, okay, to create a simple regression. And there you have one independent and one dependent variable. We've also shown you how to generate a multiple regression. Notice that we use both the analysis tool pack and we also use the insert charts to generate that regression line for the polynomial, and that was consistent with the multiple regression that we ended up with in the analysis 2-pack from the data analysis tab. And then we've also shown you how to go about using the Excel modules in generating weighted moving averages, which are going to become rolling forecasts. So you continuously put in your predictions in the actual values to be able to generate all the 5 out of sample forecasts that you'll be tasked to do in your assignment. If you didn't have access to Excel modules, don't worry. We've also shown you that the Excel sheets that are available on Moodle can be adapted, and all that you do is you clear the actual values and you replace them with your own data sets. And if you need to add, you just add additional years at the bottom, and you continuously generate the forecast and enter the forecast as part of the actual values here. So that's a quick run through regressions. I think you would be able to use these tools, be able to use some regressions, moving averages, and weighted moving averages to generate a couple of forecasts that you can triangulate. And by triangulating, you're simply taking an average. Keep your eye on the error metrics as well and comment on them. Remember, the bigger your errors, the less valid or reliable your forecasts are. But if you remember the initial words that we said, we can't be certain, we can't be 100% certain, because we are dealing with fallible cues. We are dealing with indicators of hidden mechanisms and latent variables. So the best we can do is to be as rational and as reasonable as we can, being guided by our intuition and the data available. So I'll end it here. It's getting too long. I hope you've got enough to chew over. And if you have any questions, you drop me an email. All the best.